Brown here with you on this, was it Wednesday morning? Stopped
Wednesday.
raining here in Memphis. And Wednesday.
Raining in Florida.
Well, y'all I'll tell you what, that hurricane that they're talking about now is heading west, not coming north. Hope it just dissipates out in the middle of the Gulf. But
Little
I'm
fish
no
storm.
weatherman. But
Fish storm, they call them.
Yeah, big storm. Hey, look, smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. Got a great hour and change coming up here. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they're the best team in the country right now. They got Oregon.
I agree.
We'll talk about that. Also, in the second section, Chris Plank Show out there in Norman. First year, man, it's tough. For everybody in this league, it's tough. Oklahoma, he'll have a lot to say. He's the sideline reporter for the Boomer Center Network. Ken Capps going to check in from Dallas. A lot going on in the Lone Star State. And holy cow, what a year we've got going right now. And, of course, Vince Ferrara checks in from Knoxville, the sports animal. Ferrara, the man from Tampa. Look, Mama Ferrara's great Italian restaurant.
I need some of that Italian this morning.
I do, too. We had some awesome shells last night that Audrey's friend Jasmine made for us. I love gratitude. I love Italian food. Look, let me say this, guys. The playoff rankings came out last night, and we're kind of like a story that you drop on a Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock. It just, I don't think a lot of people saw it, but I did, and I saw all that other stuff. It was a hell of a night. 1 through 12, Oregon, number 1. We're going to talk about it. Let's bring Jordan Davis Hill on here right now. Like I said,
you're looking so handsome this morning, Mr. Hill.
Not glowing red like my wife had me for a minute, but good to be on there with you guys.
Hey, man, the crazy thing is the internet or the interweb or whatever we call it, it can make us. Yesterday, I was having problems. Brendan was having to walk me off the cliff. It was rough. Glad you're joining us this morning. Let's get your thoughts this past weekend, the takeaways from the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville, the Battle of Duval County, Georgia, 34-20. You get the win. Carson Beck's turnovers are an issue, whatever you say about Georgia, we're ready to take notes. Get pen and paper handy, people.
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is that Carson Beck's got to cut down on these turnovers. 3 interceptions, 2 in the first half, and then the other one in the third quarter. And, there's been some games this year, Rob. I think about one of the interceptions he threw against Alabama where miscommunication, kind of more on the receiver, didn't get a check. I mean, the ones on Saturday were just trusting your arm too much and just making bad decisions. So, I mean, I wrote about this on Sunday after the game. I mean, Georgia's not going to win a national title with Carson making those kind of mistakes. But credit to Nate Frazier, true freshman, that had to kind of carry the load. Trevor Etienne was dealing with a rib injury. Really didn't play a ton. Had 7 carries in that game. Defense deserves a huge shout out because they kept bending but not breaking after those turnovers, limited the damage, kept Georgia in this thing. And, I will give Carson Beck credit. He bounced back in that second half. He had a streak there where I think he had 11 or 12 completions in a row after that third interception. So was not pretty. I get a lot of Georgia fans are upset with how he's been playing. I think it's totally fair. He's thrown 11 interceptions this year. I think he only had 6 or 7 last year. So it's been uncharacteristic for what we expected, especially his second year as a starter. He's got to clean it up if Georgia's going to go win a national title.
Jordan, what do you think the issue is?
I just think he's forcing throws, Brendan. I just
aiming it, or is it's just like one of those classic trying too hard things?
I think it's just trying too hard, and I do honestly kind of think Saturday was he kind of got in his own head because the first interception was bad, but if you watch the play back, there was a one-on-one situation on the outside. A Florida defender was up to cover a running back, but he had another defender there, so he drops back, and as he's dropping back, Carson makes that throw. Now, it was going to be dangerous anyway. It was one-on-one, but I think after that, he kind of started pressing because the second interception he threw across the middle, I wrote about this on our site on Tuesday. I don't know a quarterback in college or even probably in the NFL that could have made that throw and tried to fit it through the window he was trying to go for. So I think that's the biggest thing is he made an early mistake and he started pressing. And you can't do that. And, we're going to talk about this game at Ole Miss. If
Yeah.
he plays like he did on Saturday, Georgia's going to lose this game if Carson Beck turns the ball over 3 times and gives Ole Miss opportunities to have short fields and go score points.
Who, in your opinion, is Ole Miss most like or most unlike of all the teams Georgia's played to this point?
It's hard for me to say, Rob. I mean, I'll give them a lot of credit in that this was, I would say on the Texas side of the defense, the defensive line, and that's an area I want to watch really closely because
Yeah.
Ole Miss leads the nation in sacks and tackles for loss. Now, I'll say this, that I don't think Ole Miss has played top-tier competition really outside of LSU, a game they lost.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they've done a great job. Walter Nolan, the guy they got from A&M, has really lived up to his expectations back when he was a high school prospect. To
Yeah.
me, this is where, especially when you look at it from the Georgia offensive perspective, this offensive line's got to hold up. And they've been hit and miss at times. I was really interested on Saturday against Florida. They were moving guys around, and it wasn't just because of injury. I mean, they had Monroe Freeling, who's a sophomore, put him in that right tackle, put him in that left tackle, move guys around. I don't know if they just were still trying to kind of find their best 5 combination or trying to just get some snaps off of some guys as that game wore on. But, yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge test for this offensive line. Given, again, Ole Miss has not played top-tier competition throughout the year, aside from that LSU game, I think. But they're really good, and Georgia's got to hold up front if they're going to be able to move the ball and consistently score points.
Yancey Porter and the folks at Rebel Yell Hotline on the show every week. I always listen. And I have to admit, Monday I was at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, and I missed because he said, I need a Georgia guy to talk about on the show. And I said, ain't none better than Jordan Davis Hill. But he talked so much about the 12 guys they have on the defensive front that they trust. And, Georgia's defensive line, when they played Texas, it looked like great white sharks taking on seal pups. I mean, it should have been rated R. What about the defensive front concerns you the most? The front 7 or just those guys on the front?
I think it's just those guys on the front. I mean, because give Lane Kiffin a lot of credit because, Rob, if you remember back at media days, Lane talked about, coming out of the loss to Georgia and the loss to Alabama last year, basically they came to the conclusion we've got to invest in these lines. We are not winning enough in the trenches, and they did that. And the defensive line, I think, is much improved. I think that offensive line is an area of weakness, which is something that Georgia defensive line is going to have to exploit. But no, I mean, I think it's mostly that front. And Kirby's been asked about it a few times this week, like what makes them so good. And he's put it pretty simple. He's like, big bodies. He said, the way you stop the run is you put a body out there that you can't move. And, Ole Miss invested in that. I think it's paid off. And it's going to be a huge challenge for Georgia. They got to show up. They got to move those bodies. They got to get their offensive line in a rhythm. And something that I've noticed throughout this year, it's so hard to run the ball in the SEC, but it does seem like Georgia has had a lot of trouble, freeing up space, getting open lanes for their guys. It's going to be hard to do on Saturday, but you got to try to make the most of those opportunities, especially knowing, Trevor Etienne may not be 100%. He's been practicing in a non-contact jersey this week. Yeah. Nate Frazier's just a freshman. This is just going to be his 4th SEC road game of his career. If you can make it easier for those running backs, takes a little bit of load off of Carson Beck, and it inspires confidence really for the whole team.
Jordan, being there Saturday, I got the sense everyone's talking about how Florida was pushing them around, pushing Georgia around on the line of scrimmage. It kind of felt like it just felt like the defensive line wasn't as healthy. It seemed like what is the injury situation on the defense? Are they hurting anywhere? I guess I'm looking for the smoking gun because it's Georgia and Florida hasn't pushed anybody around in a long ass time. So what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I was just underwhelmed across the board, Brendan, with that defensive line's play, especially 2 weeks after. I mean, as Rob said, they dominated Texas. So
yeah, that's what I mean.
I think they kind of once DJ Lagway went out, I kind of think they just were a little bit more conservative with the rush and said, all right, we're going to try to just let Aiden Warner, try to make him make mistakes. But no, I mean, again, I was underwhelmed with how they played. I think they know they can't play like that. And it was funny listening back to the broadcast afterwards, that Kirk Herbstreit, I think, was who said that he felt like Georgia went into that Texas game feeling a little disrespected.
Yeah.
Maybe they need that going in this Ole Miss game, because I did not think that defensive front played nearly as well as they did in that Texas game. And again, Kirby's talked about Jackson Dart this week and said how dangerous he is. The fact he can move. He said you got to tackle him like he's a running back because of how big he is, how physical he is. I think maybe they need a chip on their shoulder, because I was underwhelmed with how that defensive line played.
Kirby is the master motivator. I haven't seen many like him. I love the guy. I love his attitude, his approach, and I watch frequently that minute and 7 seconds before the TCU game. That'll get you up. That'll wake you up in the morning. Go back.
Sorry, Rob, but I wanted to say this too. Is that there's people, and Rob, you talk about this, Todd. And I know George. We've all talked about it. If you're a fan of the SEC, if you have a team in the SEC SEC rivalries matter, and they play differently. I mean, do you feel like there was some of that going on, Jordan, as far as because Georgia Florida is a battle. I mean, it's bloodshed. It's a war because it's Florida Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there was the piece of it too with. We talked about, I think, on the show last week, Carson Beck is from Jacksonville. Trevor Etienne, although he didn't play a ton, I don't think there was much love lost between those two teams, between Trevor and Florida, at least during the game. I think that they came into that game with a chip on their shoulder. And, I give Florida a lot of credit because they pushed Georgia. And, I'm not convinced that Florida wins that game if DJ Lagway doesn't get hurt. But I will say that I think it would have been down to the wire if he had stayed healthy. Those games are what make this conference great, and it was a fun one for sure.
Well, that's a head scratcher too. I was reading articles about why the quarterback that came in for Florida, Aiden, from was the guy that comes in from the kid from CSU. So this whole game, it just always continues to create more mystique for the University of Florida. It's like, oh, they're almost there. They almost beat Georgia. Yeah, we almost beat Tennessee too. You almost won in Missouri too last year. Yeah, almost. So I think Georgia's great because Georgia gets up can find ways to win on these these games. These games are hard to win.
Definitely, and I would just say, Rob, before you jump in, that the thing I would credit Georgia for, even in the games where they have just had mistakes and gotten in their own way, it's like the moment that you notice, like, uh-oh. Like, this, like when Florida tied that game 2020, you go, oh, Florida's kind of got the momentum. Credit to Georgia. They made plays after that to win the game. And I know that it's not music to Georgia fans' ears. They're like, well, why don't you just go beat them by 4 touchdowns? But at the end of the day, if you got your back against the wall and you consistently respond, I mean, that is worth something.
Well, if you go back and look 20 or 30 years ago in the pregame offices of the coaches in the SEC football game, it would typically say goals to win: rush for 250 plus, pass for 160 plus, and special teams, no mistakes. Now it's a flip. If you run for 160, that's kind of my benchmark when I bet on games, is if you can run for north of 160. Looking at Ole Miss, and they are really aggressive on the front. You got no Brock Bowers, no Ladd McConkey. Who's emerging as the deep threat that maybe no one's talking about, but you bust your butt every day finding these stories, not to let the secret out, but just from your perspective, who may we see Saturday we've not heard of for Georgia?
Well, I don't know about not heard of, but the guy that I don't think is getting enough credit is Arian Smith. And I wrote about this on Monday. Texas game, kind of going back to what we were just talking about of like Georgia having the response when they need it. Texas game, they've still got the lead, but you have that weird overturned penalty, with the trash and all that. Texas scores. Yeah. Texas has the momentum. Georgia gets into a situation where I think it's 3rd and 10 on the drive after that. Carson Beck hits Arian Smith. They move the chains. They go down the field and score and basically take that game back over. Very similar situation in the Florida game on Saturday. After Florida tied that game, 3rd and 7, Carson Beck hits Arian Smith, who not only catches it, but winds up breaking off for a 31-yard gain. Arian Smith has been a huge part of this offense. I think he doesn't get enough credit. He's a guy that struggled early in the season with drops. I think he's become more consistent as that's gone. He's the guy where when it's put up or shut up, I would say Carson's throwing to number 11. Watch number 11 in these critical moments because Carson trusts Arian Smith, and that trust is going to go a long way. Because if you're in a spot where it's like I gotta have this play, I mean, over and over again, Arian Smith's been the guy getting the ball.
Yeah, and you go back like Shoney down in Valdosta, Rob. Different game, Rob Brown. Of course it is, but you also think about what we see every Saturday. The teams that have depth. Kirby and Georgia are one of the teams that actually have depth. They've not had as many guys leave, and they've also been very selective in who they bring in. I'm just curious. Everybody in this footprint is either a Braves fan, a Rays fan, or a Cardinals fan. Now, I'm just going to take a wild guess. You think Kirby ever spends any time with Alex Anthopoulos, the mastermind behind the Braves culture, or Alex ever goes to Athens? Because they both have created a culture, and you've got to be really elite to join that club, and it works.
I think Alex should probably take some notes from Kirby. I'm not quite convinced Kirby probably does it. Kirby's probably enjoyed a Braves game here and there, but no, I mean, again, Kirby's figured it out. Kirby had the blueprint coming in, and he learned from Nick. And what always impresses me is just how good they are consistently. And I know that fans are frustrated this year with how things have gone, but we're still talking about a team that's number 3 in this first playoff ranking that lost Brock Bowers, who's having an outstanding rookie season, Ladd McConkey, who's been one of the leading receivers for the Chargers. They lost a ton, and I know it's not been perfect.
It's hard,
but it's hard replacing guys like that. Yeah. And they're still sitting pretty. They still got several big games left, but I think they deserve a lot of credit for the way they remount and reload.
Yeah, they do. And before we let you go, I know you got a lot going on. Where's Ladd McConkey from? I know he's an in-state guy.
Yeah, he's up in, I think that was Murray County where he went to school. And he was a guy that grew up a Tennessee fan. So that gets brought up. I imagine that'll get brought up by folks that he loved Tennessee as a kid, and Tennessee just got on him later than Georgia did. I mean, Georgia showed interest in him already late in the process. And Tennessee kind of got interested, but they didn't offer him a scholarship. And he's a dog, and I know a whole lot of Georgia fans that are glad that I believe that would have been Jeremy Pruitt's staff that they kind of slipped on. They kind of dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah, Jeremy Pruitt, I think he's one of the greatest defensive coaches in college football ever. Him and Brother Oliver reminds me a lot of that character Shatner in the original Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds. He was the guy was in prison for He was a rough guy. He had multiple black belts, and they said, you want to play football? He said, nope. They said, you get to hit the guards. He goes, I'll play. That's Jeremy Pruitt. And I think he's going to reemerge somewhere as a great coach. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us. You always bring it. Your internet's never looked better. Next time I see you, I'm going to, if we're anywhere near a Crystal, I'm going to buy you a steamer pack because that's a high honor on this show. You get a steamer pack. But always you bring your A game. You always tweet out and let us know what we can also do to help you with your brand. Let them know how they can follow you, and we'll do it again next week. Blind Squirrel Sports wants an autographed picture. I'm going to have to get him one from you, but thank you.
We'll have to work on that. But, yeah, dogs247.com on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at dogs247. So get ready for this big trip to Oxford. I think it's going to be an entertaining game, and looking forward to recapping it with you guys next week.
Absolutely, man. Have fun in Oxford. If you need anything, Yancey Porter is your man. He's the mayor of Oxford. Take care.
See you, Jordan. Thanks.
All right. Hey, Plank Show. Plank, what do you got down on the sidelines? Should join us in just a minute.
Plank is not here.
Plank is not here. Let's see where Plank is.
He is not in our green room. I haven't seen anybody pop in.
Let's see.
Mr. Plank, if you can hear us. He was a little late last time. I think he does like a drop-off for kids. And then
he's got multiple kids, young kids.
Yeah, so he does a drop-off because it's an hour for him earlier. So he's in Carline.
Let's just say we all know about the carpool Nazi, like on the soup Nazi on Seinfeld. You're on your phone. Drop and give me 20. They'll get you, won't they, Brendan?
It's actually a state law. Now in Florida, you cannot be on your phone in Carline, or the sheriff will come out and give you a ticket.
Yeah, and they ain't playing around. Hey, Great questions by you. We work together like a couple of trial attorneys in there
That's right.
when we're questioning.
Cross-examining them.
But I like what you asked about Florida. And this is my take on Florida. There's an old wise coach said one time, I was listening to his remarks after a game, and he said, well, I'm going to tell you right now, as soon as we start playing out of the same deck of cards as all them other schools, we're going to have our share of the fun. And I'm going to talk to y'all a few more minutes, but I got to get to work and recruit because we need players. I see Florida starting to make progress. Here he is, Plank Show.
I told you he was in the car. He's got to drop off his kids. He's got car line, man.
Watch out.
I'm good. I apologize. I was on with our buddies T-Bob and Jacob Hester, and we went a skosh long. So I apologize for that.
No worries.
And I had daughter. I did have daughter responsibilities this morning. So
I feel you, brother. Feel you.
But thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. Sorry I'm running behind.
No, you're fine. We always love it. We had Jordan Hill on talking about Georgia and Ole Miss, Georgia, Florida. Love the Plank Show. Listen to the Oklahoma Sooner Football Network. I'm a radio junkie, okay?
Good. We need more
absolutely.
of you.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And I love it.
Talk radio. Grew up on it.
Yeah, and listening to the football games. I've got this thing that goes around my neck.
Yeah.
It's the real-time broadcast at an Auburn game with Andy Burcham and the crew.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's real-time. And they listen to it like, let's head down to the field. Plank, what do you got? Kind of like Lauren Smith and Larry Munson, the legendary Georgia broadcast crew. Lauren, what do you got? Well, they're at Georgia just running roughshod over Florida until the fourth quarter. That's tied up. All right, that's enough. 1:23:83 seconds left. Hunker down, you silver britches. We got to go. My God, we just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. Chris, what's your most famous call or description of something that's happened with Oklahoma? Did you grow up in Oak City, Norman, out there?
No. I grew up, it's kind of wild because this weekend is a bit of a homecoming. I grew up in St. Louis.
Okay.
I grew up in a small town just outside of St. Louis. And, where I grew up, we were Illinois or Missouri fans.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of Notre Dame fans, too. My best friend was a Notre Dame fan. I'll tell you this much. All of my great calls, Rob, everything anyone remembers me from is softball. So that's, I've called 4 straight national championships, 6 in the last 8 years.
You are the voice behind that dynasty?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
In fact, we got our final spring tune-up tonight, our fall tune-up tonight. They do a thing called the Battle Series where they play an inter-squad matchup, and then they put a wrap on the spring, and then they unveil the highest-ranked recruiting class they ever have next Wednesday. So they're cooking right now under Patty Gass. You got to get down there for a softball game, Rob. You'd love it.
Oh, no, we love it. I'm going to tell you something. Remember the movie Jaws? And I think about this Oklahoma softball coming into the SEC. We're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, they're really good, man. But I think sideline wise, now that you mention it, I was just realizing a couple of years ago, we went, we had a walk-off winner. Oklahoma did. Gabe Burkich. They never had a walk-off field goal win before. And, I try to be mindful of what I can and can't do. Rob, I just ran out on the field and stuck a mic in front of his face. I was like, how did that feel? So that was a pretty cool moment. Even, no knock on the Mountaineers. It was just West Virginia. It was a regular season game, but it was a pretty cool moment.
It is. Let me also say, I saw what happened Sunday morning in Oklahoma City and the areas around there, tornadoes. I don't just pray for certain things. I believe in a constancy in prayer. But if there's a number that you can give out for people to provide support and relief for the people in Oklahoma, let us know because we're here to help others. That's what this show thrives on.
Well, I don't have any number, and I apologize for that right off the top of my head. I will just say the Red Cross of Oklahoma is doing incredible things right now.
Yeah.
And, we Saturday night, for those that aren't familiar with what Rob's talking about, Saturday night at about, and you had the fallback. I was doing the post-game show on XM. So we got off the air at about 1 a.m. I go in, I start to lay down, and I see tornado warnings in November.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is crazy. The stat was the state of Oklahoma had only issued 13 tornado warnings in November in the previous 40 years combined. And from Saturday into Sunday into Monday, they had 75. So it was just crazy.
God.
snowstorm outbreak. It hit around Tinker Air Force Base in Shawnee really hard. So those communities are struggling right now. But it shows you the power of early detection in that we didn't lose any lives, which is great happened.
Yeah, well, Oklahoma, the University of Oklahoma has like probably the top meteorology department, them and Mississippi State. Yeah. And they train everybody. And watching Oklahoma this year, at least they didn't have to say, remember the Maine, referring to history. But Oklahoma took care of business. You got Missouri this weekend. Kind of give us a report card about what your thoughts are on Oklahoma, what they've got to go out and get in recruiting, because it's a damn near $1 billion brand. It's an iconic program. You got a lot of people that look like Rip from Yellowstone that pull for the Sooners. And frankly, I love that program as a fan because they're great for college football. They pack them in like sardines for every game, but not just for football, but for every sport. They love their Sooners.
Okay. Need to get the offensive line fixed, Rob.
Yeah.
And I think what Oklahoma fans have learned and what OU coaches and their offensive line coach, Bill Bedenbaugh, has learned, OU really got hurt by guys leaving early for the draft and then by a couple of portal exits. There are 3 returning starters on this offensive line that left. One of them completely unexpected with Caden Green, who transferred to Missouri. One kind of expected with Jacob, with Tyler Guyton going to the NFL, and he ended up getting taken in the first round. And the other was a shock. Andrew Rain was their 2-year, 3-year starting center, and he went to the league and went undrafted. Now, good for Andrew. He got signed by the Panthers and has had a pretty good rookie season. So Oklahoma's problem had been where they've tried to replace these guys that leave early with portal players. And I don't know across the board how portal offensive linemen are working and looking, but it hasn't really worked so well for Oklahoma. One guy is virtually unplayable that they brought in out of the portal. One guy got hurt and then he couldn't get back into the lineup. Another guy had a season-ending injury after the first game. You got 2 other dudes who are hurt. So, you got 4 or 5 portal guys that just aren't making an impact. And Brent Venables is heading into his 4th year after this season. And I don't think people are going to have the patience to say, all right, you got a great recruiting class coming in of linemen. Just play the young guys, take your lumps. Oklahoma can't take the lumps. They got to win. Yeah. So they have a really strong offensive line class coming in. It's the best offensive line class they've ever had. Now you got to keep it together and then decide what you're going to do with it. It's embarrassing with some of the numbers. 10 sacks against South Carolina, 9 sacks against South Carolina, 10 against Ole Miss. They look better against Maine, but if you didn't look better against Maine, then we'd really have a problem. So Saturday to me is going to be a big time test. Missouri has some guys that can get after the quarterback, but Oklahoma's got its defense in a spot where it can compete. It's just got to get its offensive line figured out.
Well, and I think that offensive line's a problem everywhere. You can't build an offensive line out of the portal. It's not going to happen. It's at least a 2-year project to develop those guys. Looking at Oklahoma, everyone thinks about great running game and all, but with Brent Venables, your defense, it's kind of the Frank Beamer of Virginia Tech. You show up with a lunch pail with a bunch of guys that look like Rip from Yellowstone, Cole Hauser. But that's it. And this guy, Bowman and Danny Stutzman, that's your typical Oklahoma. So Brent Venables, when you talk about elite defensive guys, Jeremy Pruitt, Brother Oliver, he's in there. That's how good he is. So,
sure. And
let me say something real quick about Landers Ford, one of our sponsors, the #1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South, open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 8. The service department, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The regular dealership open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day of the week except Sunday. They're off on Sundays, okay? Now, Brad Bellamy is the general manager, our friend. When you call out there, LandersFordMemphis.com, hit the QR code on the phone, new car, truck, or SUV. They will walk you through the process. It's quick. It's worth it. They have a giant inventory located Poplar and Houston Levy out in Collierville. But LandersFordMemphis.com. Let them know you heard about them on Sidelines. They've got the Ford Broncos, the F-150s. You can power a house in a storm for up to 30 hours with the power pack in an F-150. And you're damn right, I drive an F-150 with four-wheel drive. It ain't a truck with the all-terrain tires. Got to get the total package. But check them out. Proud to have them as a sponsor. Chris, let's talk about this game with Missouri coming up. You grew up, I used to work for A.G. Edwards, spent a lot of time in St. Louis, at Laclede's Landing and Ladue. And St. Louis has 35 really nice suburbs. There's a lot of money up there, Kansas City and St. Louis. But Oklahoma is coming to town. What do you think is going to happen? Missouri's not been what they were supposed to be either.
Right, and that's Missouri, though. That's historically what Missouri has been. You know, when they're expected to do something, they struggle. Now, they've had some good squads. I think the last time OU played Missouri was in the Big 12. No, I apologize. They played in the Big 12 championship game, and then the last time they played was 2011 in Norman. It was one of my first games as the sideline reporter. So they've got a long, rich history and tradition of playing each other. And recently, Rob, it's become a little bit spicy between the fans. Missouri came and got Caden Green, and Caden Green was supposed to be a major part of what Oklahoma was going to do on the offensive line in 2024, 25, 26. Theo Wease transferred there. Now, the Theo Wease transfer wasn't a bad thing. You know, they didn't see a role for him with the offensive staff that was here at the time. So he left and went to Missouri and has had a nice career. You add Williams and Airy, who Oklahoma was really close on getting in the recruiting world. He goes to Missouri. Luther Burden was committed to Oklahoma before he flipped to Missouri. So you've got kind of this tension between the fan base. Oklahoma's got a Missouri guy in J.J. Hester. So, you know, it's interesting on that front to where you have a lot of ties between the two teams. But it is wild how, you know, here's this Missouri team that gets humbled a couple weeks ago by Alabama. Brady Cook gets hurt. He comes back in, saves the day against Vanderbilt. But I don't think he's going to be able to go. So I think you're going to see a slugfest. I think Missouri's pretty good defensively. And I think Oklahoma's still struggling to find its identity offensively. Now, if you want some good news for Oklahoma, they might be getting a couple of their receivers back. Deion Burks is practicing this week. Who's the other guy that's Farouk? Jalil Farouk is practicing this week. So there's a chance that they could bolster their receiving core, which is huge for that offense. But I think it's going to be a slugfest, a defensive battle this weekend because I don't really know if either team's going to have success moving the ball. You talked about the history and the tradition of Oklahoma being running the football. This kid, Javonte Barnes, has really started to step up the last few weeks. And as bad as the offensive line has been, it's been pretty good with run blocking. So I think this is going to be a battle of who can establish the run and who minimizes mistakes, because when Oklahoma loses, Rob, do they make some mistakes? Do they turn the ball over? And if that happens, they're going to get beat.
Well, you know, I think an industrious fan in Oklahoma's got a ton of them, looks at the SEC, and I guess, are you noticing this grind, how brutal it is? Just, I mean, look at Texas. Okay, they beat y'all in the Red River Shootout, and what do they get as a reward? They go home. Thank you, sir. May I have another? And face the Georgia Bulldogs. Hunker down, you silver britches. We're going to Austin. Keep it weird. My God, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it red and black. We're gonna just take over the world. Have you had a lot of fun on your road trips?
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, that's kind of been a little bit different. We're doing a 3-hour pregame show now.
Yeah.
So we don't really get to experience it too much. And here's the other thing. We haven't stayed close to the city in which the college is in either one of our trips. We go to Auburn, we're staying in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah.
We go to Ole Miss, and we're staying in Memphis. Now, Memphis is awesome. But it's just, it's kind of hard to truly get that game day sense on the broadcast. Now, all my friends that are going, they're loving it. And I thought Oklahoma represented really, really well on the road in their 2 trips. Should be the same on Saturday against Missouri. But Missouri's a trip that they're used to taking. I think LSU is that trip coming up here in a few weeks that fans have been pining away for.
Yeah, yes, and I know you're busy. We got Ken Capps, Football Writers Association of America, out in Dallas from Austin, covers Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. I think the coolest thing, I talked to a lot of Oklahoma fans at the Auburn game, And I mean, they fit this league. I mean, like Spicoli fit the surfer role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's who they are. Texas loves it. Oklahoma loves it. Before you go, again, and let people know, of course, how they can follow you, because you do the Plank Show every day on KREF in Oak City, Norman. What do we not know about Oklahoma? People always ask me this. They say, get your guests to talk about stuff, because we're covering all 16 teams. But what do we not know about Oklahoma that we need to know about? Kind of some special color, especially for people like Alabama fans making that road trip out there to Norman, and it's because it's an incredible college town.
Well, first of all, what they need to know is we usually don't block this terribly, Rob. Usually a much better offensive line and a much better offense. But Oklahoma is here's what I would say. If you're coming to Norman, don't be afraid to stay in Moore or in Oklahoma City. It's not that bad of a drive. It's one highway to get you there. Yeah. And Moore's the home of Toby Keith, so there's a lot of cool stuff there, a lot of great restaurants. Oklahoma City's downtown, Thunder, they're blowing up. But I think what you'll notice when you come to Norman is they've really embraced the SEC. I think I've told you this before. The relationship between the city of Norman and Oklahoma, the University of Oklahoma, hasn't always been great. That changed as soon as the SEC came on board. Yeah. And so they're talking about a new downtown basketball arena that they're going to build. There's a lot of great restaurants, and it's a place that's really excited about the SEC. They're building $1 billion RV park. I mean, I'm being, it's not $1 billion, but it's going to be state of the art. So they're really embracing this, and being SEC ready matters a lot to this city as much as it does the athletic department at Oklahoma.
Well, and you can use a term we use down here in the Deep South. Saturday is Saturday. Another one for a lot of money is a gazillion dollars. Gazillion.
That's right. We need a gazillion
right.
dollars to get an O-line.
Well, hey, it's the toughest position to recruit right now in the age of the portal. Yep. Chris, let's do it again next week. Love having you on. You're a professional's professional. Again, let them know about your great show, how they can put the app on their phone.
Yeah, just look for the KREF app, search KREF, and however you consume podcast, or wherever you get your apps. KREF, however you consume podcasts, you can listen to the podcast. Rob, thanks for having me. Go follow me on Twitter at Plank Show, and hope you guys have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much for being part of it. Love having these folks on. Ken Capps, FWAA, out in Dallas, Texas, in the Plex. And flex the Plex is what he likes to say. The mobile reporter right now, look, lot happening in the Lone Star State. 30 million people that we know of live out there. Texas A&M, you cover Oklahoma. You know this league. Texas has got Florida coming to town Saturday. This past weekend, we had the renewal of a classic from 1982, SMU and Pitt. Ken, your thoughts and comments on what's happening as only the great writers can do. And Vince Ferrara is going to be on in just a few minutes from Knoxville, covers Tennessee. So we're going to get some kind of our version of Sidelines City Limits in a minute.
Well, I tell you, I attended the SMU Pitt game on Saturday, and man, I tell you, we've talked about this now for a couple of years, how the city of Dallas has really embraced SMU, and SMU went out and went after the city of Dallas, and to become Dallas's team, and like Northwestern has become Chicago's team, and man, the place was sold out. I don't remember the last time it was sold out, and it was just so much energy. I don't know if you saw my Twitter post, but I had a picture of Peruna, their live mascot horse, coming in the stadium, and they had 6 students trying to hold on to him, and they couldn't. I mean, he was trying to get away, man. That's one strong little horse, and but that's just how much energy was in that stadium. And then SMU just came out and just blew the doors off Pitt. I mean, the final score was 48-25, but Pitt got a couple of late touchdowns that were in garbage time. And man, they just Kevin Jennings, the quarterback of SMU, Nick Saban has called him the most underrated player in the country. and he just came out and just, just directed that offense left and right, and just, kept the ball rolling. And of course, what I couldn't believe was how Eli Holstein on the other side of Pitt just could not get the ball going. And I think that's a credit to the SMU defense a lot, which is not known really for playing defense.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin is that while this wonderful game is going on, we're sitting in this nice press box. There are like TVs all over the press box. And if the game's not on the ACC network with the SMU game on, they're all watching the Aggies Gamecocks game.
Yeah. I'm sure there was nothing ugly said in that press box.
Oh, no. And man, 20-20 at the half, Aggies and South Carolina. And then South Carolina comes along and shuts them out in the second half, which blew my mind. Just runs away with the ball. Marcel Reed is just, so ineffective, causing fumbles. Really, really surprising to me. And of course, they've lost Le'Veon Moss for the year, their best running back. And so what I thought, the other interesting take that I thought, Rob, and then I'll shut up, is that all four teams that Texas plays coming down the pike, Florida, Kentucky, A&M, and who am I missing? Arkansas. Yeah. They all lost this weekend. So very, very interesting of college football while Texas sat at home and tried to get healthy.
Well, you're right. And I think the cool thing, I guess crazy thing is that just when you think this is a different A&M, they go on the road, South Carolina puts together a full 60. This is one of the most exciting seasons I can remember. Vince Ferrara, we normally have Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net on here. He had to switch to Thursday this week. But and Vince is, I'm telling you what, Ken, Vince is one of the absolute best pros there is. He's from Tampa, has worked in Tuscaloosa and around, a pro's pro. And I'll tell you about Marcel Reed, our intern, big part of us. Oakley McFerrin, who's a freshman at Auburn, you met him out there. Y'all all did at SEC Media Days. He played football at MBA, was a starting wide receiver, honorable mention, all Davidson County. And I asked him about Marcel Reed, and he said he's a coach's son. And so that part of it is the cerebral part of it. And Vince, jump in here right now when you can. He is unfrozen. There was a Disney movie called Frozen. That's what a lot of times when we do these podcasts, welcome to Frozen. But Vince, jump in here real quick in this craziness that is the college football season 2024.
All right. To be
Vince,
on
you
with
there?
you guys, it was cool
we lost
to see
him. Okay. Buddy's on here with us right now, Buddy Martin. And when you come back in, Vince, in just a minute. But, Buddy, it's really cool to get all these takes from what's going on in college football around the country. Ken covered that SMU Pitt game. He's covering all the Texas and OU stuff on there right now. Jump in here and say hello to Ken. Great writers. When they get together, make great music.
Hey, I follow you guys. Ken, it's good to see you again, and I enjoy your stuff. And we had an interesting discussion late night on my show last night about things to see in Austin and acting like we knew what was going on. I love Austin. I've been there numerous times, but mostly 30 years ago. So I don't have a frame of reference. I've probably been in the stadium 8 or 9 times. I was
Earth to Rob.
Yeah. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you hear
well,
me?
The other thing that I just wanted to mention, on the Oklahoma, I heard y'all talking about Oklahoma right as I was dropping off my beautiful young daughter at high school just a few minutes ago. Oklahoma now is 5-4, okay, by beating Maine. Okay, not a whole lot to say you beat Maine, but it did get you to 5 wins. There are 3 games left on their schedule. They still may not make a bowl. And that would be the first time in 25 consecutive years that Oklahoma has not made a bowl. And that would just be really shocking for me for their first year in the SEC. And that's another thing that Herb Street and several other of the big time pundits out there, other than the people on this show, of course, have said that Oklahoma did not come to the league SEC ready, and and facing the gauntlet of what they've got with LSU, with Alabama coming to Norman. My gosh, I may have to drive 200 miles up the road here to Oklahoma City and see that game. That would just be amazing. And there's been talk this week that Venables is going to hire Brandon Marion, who was the wide receivers coach at Texas and has been a really for the offensive coordinator's job. And he was a real up and coming young coach when he was at Texas a couple of years ago. And he runs a very aggressive offense, which I think would fit really well at Oklahoma. Of course, it just goes back to, always the soap opera between, Texas coaches at Oklahoma coaches at Texas, that kind of thing. But I think you're going to see a real, even if Oklahoma makes a bowl by some hook and crook, I still think you're going to see Venables pretty much have to dump his entire staff on both sides of the ball and just start over. And then next year, he's going to be the one on the hot seat. His buyout is $48 million, believe it or not. I mean, that's some pretty good coin there. But I was just, I was really shocked this year that Oklahoma didn't come in and play better in the SEC. But of course, they've had this quarterback controversy going on. Jackson Arnold finally played like Jackson Arnold is supposed to play, was expected to play against, but it's Maine. Okay. Yeah. It's Maine. Yeah. But still, he looked great. He threw there's another, great little writer's point. I love it when you point that out because we do love these facts. He threw the longest touchdown pass in Oklahoma's home field history, 90-yard TD pass last Saturday.
Yeah, wow. We know about mediocrity down here.
So, and then it's going to be a question for him: Is he gonna stick around? After the way he was treated this year, and now I think they've made him a captain again. Is he going to stick around, or is he going to go in the portal? Because I mean, he's a Denton Geyer guy from right down here in the Metroplex, and he may want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, buddy. I see this thing from Blind Squirrel Sports, off topic, but I heard Buddy's basketball Gators, coached by Todd Golden, I think one of the best coaches in the league, have a 7'9" freshman on the team. And Vince is coming back. Is that true, buddy?
Yeah, we'll get into that later. You got Vince back here with not basketball season yet. Now this is football season, but yeah, they're loaded. I've got an incredible picture of a good friend of mine who's 6'2", standing around a bunch of guys who are like 8 feet tall. He looks like a dwarf. Pardon my use that name, but I mean they are monsters, and they can play, and they look pretty good. They had their moments. Couldn't throw it in the ocean the first half against South Florida, 3 for 15 or whatever, but they came back, and Walter Clayton Jr. is a guy to watch. He can put the points up. But it's football season. I want to hear about those Tennessee Vols.
Yeah, the checkerboard end zones, the giant T, the pride of the Southland marching.
Here's a question for you. Hey, here's a question for you. Let's see if Vince can tell me. Who brought in the checkerboard end zones at Tennessee?
That's a good question. I do not know that off the top of my head. I should.
I do know it.
Okay. I figured you did if you're asking.
Doug Dickey, a Gator. Doug Dickey brought the checkerboard in.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Tennessee was a scourge to the SEC and was winning championships. And then he came to Florida and couldn't win a game.
Well, that's the number of relationships, Texas and OU, Auburn, Georgia, and Florida, Tennessee. Vince, let's talk some Vols, man. That was a good win against Kentucky. The orange and white lights are on. Feel free to walk around the cabin freely.
Yeah, well, it was the black and orange lights on Saturday because they did the dark mode thing with the jerseys and everything.
I like those. Those are good looking jerseys.
I agree with you. I'm not on board with all of them, and you guys know the old school fans. They're not a fan. They want their team to wear their colors, but if you're gonna change it up and do a dark mode, and they usually do one a year. That's a sharp look. So, Tennessee again was not sharp offensively in the first half. They did at least score, which is something they did not do in the first half of the 3 previous games. They did get a touchdown and then got going in the second half. That's kind of been the recipe as of late. But, they had turnovers and penalties and just too many self-inflicted wounds in the first half. And Kentucky actually moved the ball a little bit against Tennessee, the most yards against Tennessee's defense all season. But Tennessee started turning over Kentucky in the third quarter. The Vols got the offense going. Then they got 2 short fields with a strip sack fumble by Joshua Josephs and then an interception in return by Will Brooks. And then it allowed the offense, which started to pick up anyway, to be able to cash in on short fields, take the lead, and then have their defense seal it out in the end. But, that Kentucky team, Mark Stoops said at the end of the game, they were down 10 starters at the end of the game. They had a bunch of injuries coming in, especially on defense, and they suffered more. Their quarterback was knocked out. I think only one, and I don't think there's anything dirty, but I think only one starting quarterback against Tennessee this year has finished the ball game. So it's that Tennessee has, whether it's been the beneficiary of just circumstances or in just hard hitting or whatever, that's been something that has happened numerous times against Tennessee. So and you saw them. Some of you might have seen them on ESPN. Jeff Saturday was featuring a couple of Tennessee players, wide receiver Mike Matthews, and also Holden Stays a tight end for their pancake blocks and just driving Kentucky players into the ground, not dirty, but just physical through the whistle. And Tennessee's got an elite defense. They're number 1 in the nation in stop percentage, which is kind of a newer metric that's out there. So 80.5% of the time, Tennessee gets some sort of stop on defense, whether it's punt, turnover on downs, or a turnover. And that's really been what's kind of helped them. The biggest development, though, last thing, is that Nico played better in this game. Their starting quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, who I know Rob knows how to pronounce his last name. But that's right, 28 of 38, 292 yards. He made really good decisions. And so I think that was a nice progression for them to be able to see him get a little bit more comfortable, and then that gives you hope that they can hit on some deep shots. The receivers dropped several touchdown passes, sure touchdown receptions, and so they can clean that up, hit a couple of deep shots with this defense. This team will be a threat to Georgia, and certainly they got to take care of their business in the other games as well.
Hey, Vince, was that quarterback Graham Mertz that finished?
No, it was not Graham Mertz, because remember he got hurt in that Tennessee game, and Lagway came in after that. So I think it was one of their. It wasn't NC State, might have been either Chattanooga or Kent State, but they changed quarterbacks with Arnold. Taylor Green went out for Arkansas, as Dudley knows. So yeah, it was either Chattanooga or Kent State, one of those two, I think.
I want to give credit to Commissioner Greg Sankey. And gentlemen, everybody on this panel and everybody watching, he's a great faith healer. After his statement Friday about the injuries, far fewer players were hurt. The fake injuries. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, what was going on in college football. So, Vince, question here from Blind Squirrel Sports. Did the Tennessee students actually choose to change the Volunteers' original colors from gray and black to orange, big orange, because of the daisies that voluntarily grew up on the hill in Knoxville? Is that true? I mean, Ken, Buddy, anybody, Vince, anyone?
Gray and black. That predates me. Certainly that's some history, but I've not heard about that. The only gray that we were kind of educated on was during the Butch Jones era when he came out with the smoky grays and said with the anthracite version of the smoky grays and said this is part of Tennessee history, and there was a lot of debate on that. So have not dug into that, but not exactly sure.
Well, they could have had Ronnie Millsaps come out and play Smoky Mountain Rain. Just keep on. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. Ken, you're listening to some cool stuff. And our sponsors like House Industries, love these people, houseindustriesinc.com. Anything agriculture, the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. They make the aerators for catfish farms. And a guy said one time, you're in the South and one of your sponsors makes the aerators for catfish farms. Well, look here. Today, when you sit your butt down for a good blackened catfish sandwich and some French fried potatoes, think about it, because House Industries is responsible for it. Ken, you're watching from afar with what we talked about with Tennessee and Florida and all these schools, big picture. Texas is doing their thing. They're in the rankings. Tennessee is 7th. Let's talk about these playoff rankings, gentlemen. I'll start with Ken and Buddy and Vince, and everybody just chime in. I'll be referee Jerry Calhoun on Saturday morning in Mid-South Wrestling, and just y'all go for it. I want to hear this.
Nice wrestling.
Well, the rankings are out there, okay, but and every week, and I looked at the playoffs. If they happen today, what would happen? And as an example, Texas would be playing Alabama in Austin at the end of December. Well, that doesn't mean squat right now. Okay, there's still 3-4 games to play, a conference championship. So I'm still not convinced of what's going to go on. I think that Ohio State is going to be is really, they deserve where they need to be after what they did against Penn State, at Penn State. Oregon, it's, I don't think their competition, quite frankly, is as tough as it is. Well, that's not a quite frankly. I've been watching too much political TV lately. They say that, quite frankly.
With all due respect.
With all due respect. Yeah, and of course, then there's no respect, right? Yeah. But, Oregon has not played the toughest schedule as they do in the SEC. However, they're still undefeated. Dylan Gabriel's their quarterback. The former quarterback at Oklahoma, who thought that, that basically Jackson Arnold ran off because he was supposed to be the starter this year, and look how that worked out, So, I think everything is lined up right where it's supposed to be today, but there's so much that's going to go on between now and, November 30th, and I think by November 30th, you'll have a real shakeout once and for all. Who would have thought that Clemson would have been beaten by Louisville? Golly. And and I thought, and at the beginning of the year, they were always listed as a CFP, a high-ranked CFP team. Yeah. So I'm still not buying the rankings. I don't care what the bowls can be the bowls. We're gonna have a great semifinal. The Cotton Bowl is gonna host the semifinal on January the 10th, which is gonna be awesome for Dallas Fort Worth, as in the Metroplex. And so we can't wait for that. But right now, Rob, it's still too much up in the air, and there can be a lot of upsets between now and after Turkey Day.
Yeah, Buddy,
I agree somewhat with that, Ken. I still think if we look at this season, what was predictable was the demolition derby that we expected, and we got that going on now with the injuries. You hear people saying all the time the combination of the transfer portal and taking players away, and the injuries and the what I call residual impact of playing in the SEC week after week. You don't have that third string. Florida's starting a quarterback from Yale. It was a walk-on. That's just one. There's many others. And Billy's got a little bit of depth. Even Kirby Smart has felt that pinch. So if you look at these rankings, you say, why would you think in the first week that you start the top 12, it would be normal and it would be the way it's going to end? It's not. It's going to be topsy-turvy. Look, we all had Boise State and Army in our top 25, right? Yeah. So I'm just looking at where I'm thinking. I've got a gut feeling here that what's going to happen is you're going to get some teams down there beyond the pale in the shadows a little bit that you got to think about. Remember, LSU, Ole Miss, teams like that still lurking down there in the second 12. Alabama still got to go. So I think if you look at the schedule in the SEC, and I just looked at Fran's Beard's column, he has all the remaining SEC games. There's going to be some people that are going to get knocked off. And now those empty spots will be taken by somebody, and to the victor goes the spoils. If they win the SEC games, they're going to be there at the end. It's not going to look the same as it does right now.
Vince, Tennessee 7th. What about that?
Yeah, first of all, I would say, Ken, enjoy it, my man. I mean, this is cool. We get to talk about all this. Yeah. You're right. It's probably it will change, but man, it's fun to talk about. There's so many scenarios, and kind of to Buddy's point as well, that so many teams are still in the mix for this, and their fan bases get a chance to be invested. Even teams at the bottom of the rankings, whether it's a Colorado or someone else, they still have dreams of potentially getting in, because it is still a possibility. I love the fact that so many of these games at the end of the year do matter. And then now you see teams that so many more teams are involved. And now those fans are looking at other games because how their opponents do matters to them for the ranking. So now college football fans are paying attention to more games. South Carolina, Vanderbilt, even though those two teams are better. Yeah. So now even more reason to follow all these games. I love it. I've never told fans or discouraged them from talking about playoffs and what Tennessee could do, or dreaming of this or dreaming of that. Not all off season or during the year. It's just cool for these fans to be in the mix and discuss this, especially for those that had to go through a lot of winning seasons. There's a lot on this. I'll just say one point because there's so much more I don't want to take up too much time, but I just think what we heard from Ward Manuel, there were some clear discrepancies to me. But one of the things that stood out was he was talking about how conferences don't matter, that they don't look at that stuff, that he listed all the reasons, head-to-head, strength of schedule, all this kind of stuff that matters. And then he said, we use stats, but it's subjective by design, which means whatever we want to use in any situation, we've not pinned ourselves into a corner. Yeah. We can always use it when we want to.
We'll do what we want to do.
We do what we want to do when we want to do it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll talk about an individual player, like he was talking up Tyler Warren at Penn State, such a dominant player. Okay. Well, what about Dylan Sampson at Tennessee? What about Cam Ward at Miami? What about other dominant players? So they use it, sometimes a loss can be a tiebreaker. Other times it's about a win. Other times, look how impressive they were, the venue. So it just reinforced that we can try to make try to figure out what they're thinking, but then they can change it next week, and they probably will.
Yeah, well, what is intriguing to me is the interest right now. God, we are paying so much attention. I mean, all three of us, I think it's fair to say, and collectively, these are three of the smartest guys we have on this show. Everybody on this show brings elite talent to the show. We cannot do it without you. And I'm including you, Ken. I know you're in the carpool line. Nice. I'm messing with you. But look, the preparation. Vince has probably been up since 4:30 this morning. Ken probably the same thing. Buddy, I was on with the Buddy Martin show last night, which, by the way, right here on this channel, 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. And then there's the occasional pop-up show that we'll do on a Saturday night, which those are like pop-up concerts. They're phenomenal. But I want to say, and when Ken comes back in with this, but the interest in college football, the regular season, it matters. Buddy alluded to it a minute ago. Ken, the interest in South Carolina going to the Skinner box, B.F. Skinner, the behavioral psychologist, he put the mice in the little box. That's what it's like getting out of the Vanderbilt Stadium since they retrofitted it. But we're going to be paying attention to South Carolina Vandy November 9th. In the past, you would have had to hit people in the head with a baseball bat and threaten them with having to put together bunk beds or something all weekend to get them to pay attention to that, Ken. I mean, this is college football is just getting better. I mean, how can you speed up great wine? You can't, but we are. That was a lot. Ken, are you there?
I want to make sure Ken's. I want to make sure Ken's there. So I want to find out if he can check out the rumor that Texas has come out in black uniforms against Florida this weekend.
Ken, any truth to that? That Willie Nelson paid for it? Yeah. I mean, buddy, what we just talked about, you've been watching football. You've been sports editor of the New York Daily News, the Denver Post, St. Pete Times. Ken, can you confirm the rumors Buddy's heard? Texas comes out in all black uniforms Saturday against the Gators.
That would be 100. That would be 100% false. Texas will never.
It's the internet. We can say it. We can say it. So.
Texas will never, and never say never, but Texas will never screw up its uniforms because Texas has one of the most classic, clean, crisp uniforms in the country, and it's always rated way up there at the top 5 in uniforms. And this brings up a pet peeve of mine. I watch the Aggies really closely. I like the Aggies. They're Texas boys, but I thought that those black uniforms they wore the other week were the ugliest damn things I had ever seen. And for them, I thought, well, if you're going to wear black uniforms, okay, but keep your classic helmet, your white helmet or your maroon helmet. And they didn't even do that. And Texas A&M, Aggies, nobody is more about tradition than the Aggies are, okay? And so I was just shocked that they did that. And I'd like to know which marketing genius decided that was a good idea. Of course, they won the game, so maybe they'll say, hey, we need to do this black thing. Maybe they'll come out in black against the Longhorns, but I can guarantee you that the Longhorns will be wearing their white uniforms, which are called, you'll love this, the Longhorns call their road uniforms their icy whites or their stormtrooper uniforms, and they look so crisp. So I just can't see many SEC teams going the way of Oregon or TCU's done it, because man, screwing up your uniform, that's just I can't see LSU. I wish Frank was here. I can't see LSU screwing up their uniforms because they're such classic uniforms, and you don't want to mess with that. So
hey, Ken, I agree with you, Ken. But what colors does Oregon have? I mean, the whole crayon box.
Yeah, I like that. I got to ask you this, Vince. Haywood Harris, legendary sports information director, one of the icons, along with Claude Felton, Norm Carlson, David Housel, Langston Rogers, Schaefer. I just got to say this.
Bob Hartley.
And Haywood Harris, I think, said, that's right, Bob Hartley, Mississippi State. Haywood Harris once said, tradition never graduates. Up on the hill, Vince, that is so powerful. And I was talking to some Tennessee fans at the Touchdown Club in Memphis Monday night. They said it was nuts what tickets are going for. And I heard from one of your most famous players' brother-in-laws said he had to pay $450 to sit up there by the Vols, up there way high where you got to have an oxygen mask. Man, isn't this awesome for college football? I mean, I know the NIL and the portal. I'm not a fan of all that. It'll work itself out. But as crazy as it is, the free market works this stuff out. So everybody chill.
Well, and think about now for these teams that are in the mix that are for the college football playoff, especially if you're an at-large, for a home playoff game. God. I mean, just insanity. And if Tennessee, with that atmosphere and how loud it gets, if they get a home playoff game, especially if they get – a quality name opponent on the other side, it'll be ridiculous anyway. But if you put it like a Notre Dame on the other side or a Texas or something, man, it would just be insane. And real quick, I didn't answer your question about Tennessee at number 7. I think that's a good spot for Tennessee. depends on what happens the rest of the way. They got to take care of their own business. If they lose to Georgia, which, most people are probably projecting, based on what I was talking about before, it depends on how they lose. And that seems to matter for the committee. They're giving you credit for losing to really good teams. That matters. We've seen that in some scenarios. That was probably the difference between Penn State at 6 and Tennessee at 7, was Penn State's loss to Ohio State versus Tennessee's loss to Arkansas. So they got to be competitive in that game if they lose. But Heather Dinich brought up an awesome stat last night I wasn't aware of. She said from 2014 to 2023, there's always been at least one 3-loss team in the top 10 in the final rankings.
Wow.
Yeah. So that doesn't guarantee this year it's going to be the case, but it gives the 2-loss teams even more confidence that they can get in, especially from the SEC. So I think Tennessee's got to feel good about where it's at. If they were to lose to somebody they're not supposed to and then beat Georgia, then it's a real wild card, probably still in because of that great win, which would be one of the best. But then how bad is the loss if they lose to somebody else? And if they beat Georgia, then they're in Atlanta, which is something else they haven't done in a long time. That's another aspect of this, is you can get into your conference championship game and then see how that might be another avenue to get you in. But then, as Reese Davis asked, does that get you docked? If you're a 2-loss team and you lose, how much do they look at that? And basically, it depends. So again,
it depends. Well, I tell you what we're going to do.
It's high risk, high reward. High risk, high reward. I like that a lot, and so I'm up for that. If I get 2 seconds, I have a question to ask this group. Rob, if I can, want to borrow their brain power. I'm prepping for my show tonight. So
it is awesome, buddy.
I need some help from you guys, Ken and Vince. I get this question a lot on the show, and myself and Shane Matthews. Let's say Florida has to fire Billy Napier. I think they should give pause to that, but nonetheless, that's they did. All right, so the question becomes in, who do you get? And my big argument is, show me somebody first before we start making those decisions. And then if you want to pay the $26 million and get somebody, I get it. But I don't see that can't miss guy out there. The closest thing to it is Lane Kiffin. So here's the premise: you're the athletic director of Florida. You have unlimited funds to hire who you want to be the coach. Who would you go and hire? It's a tough one because Florida fans aren't going to accept another guy from the Sun Belt Conference. They just aren't. I'm sorry. So what do you do? So I have my thoughts about it, but let me get Ken and Vince to give me. You have unlimited amount of money. Go hire me a coach at Florida.
Wow. Well, I tell you who's going to probably be the FWAA Coach of the Year, and well deserved. Of course, I don't know this for sure, but I think he's going to be definitely a candidate and will be worthy of the vote. Is the guy from Indiana? I mean, he is. Golly, what he's done up there is just absolutely amazing. And he's a young guy, very innovative guy. But my only pause to that is that Billy Napier was that guy 2 years ago at Florida. Exactly. He was the young guy. He was the innovative guy. And but I just still can't believe. I mean, buddy, do you really think Kiffin would come to Florida from Ole Miss? I mean, he's just got such a good.
I know a guy who's good friends with him. He said yes, he wants the job. But look, Lane Kiffin said Lane Kiffin's got a little poopy dust on him now. Is he the guy? He would still cost you $15 million and a 5-year contract or more. Is he worth it? I don't know. Maybe he is. But I know, Vince, if I give you the money, who do you go and hire? And Cignetti's name has come up a lot. I don't know if, like Ken said, we don't want to go back and get Billy Napier 2.0,
Well, I think Napier didn't have the Power 5 experience, and Curt Cignetti does. He's also a little bit older. He's not, super young. He's been around the block a little
63 years old.
Yeah. So, but he is newer to the head coaching ranks. One that I think would get a lot of look and run is Rhett Lashley from SMU. So he's so highly thought of. Again, he's in a Power 5 conference, but he hasn't been there very long. Are the Florida fans going to look at him the same way? And here's a little wild card one. I don't know if I would do it, but if Colorado wins the Big 12, you're telling me Deion Sanders won't upgrade?
They never hire him here. He's an FSU guy for one thing. Yeah. But I agree with you in terms of that theory. And Rob, I know you want to get in here and give you this. I'm going to give you my mandate. Best guy possible. Whoever it is, Rob, who do you get?
The best guy possible is the guy that I think knows the SEC, has been there, knows how to recruit it, but I don't think he would leave. I like Rhett Lashley. Played at Arkansas, has recruited, coached at Auburn 6 or 7 years. He's been thrown under the bus by Gus a few times. Hop on the bus, Gus. He knows this league. That's one that I like. Rhett is a badass. He's a fiery guy. He's tough. He's got like 4 kids. He had twins born in Auburn. He's really, really good. Other than that, I would take maybe Dan Schumann, defensive coordinator from Georgia.
Then you're taking a defensive coordinator. Here's the thing, and I get where you're saying from, but just the fact that we can't come up with that guy indicates what I'm talking about.
Oh, I agree.
That guy. So let me give you this scenario.
Yeah.
How much will Florida realize in revenue the next 5 years from the new agreement? How much, you guys? How much more?
80 million. 80 million.
100 million, probably. Let's say 5 years, whatever, more. All right. So let me say, I got that money in my pocket, right? 80 million. I got to get seats and panties in the seats. I got to get the program rebuilt. What do I do? Well, you go hire the best in the business, right? This is going to be crazy, and it's never going to happen. But I'm going to say to you, I'm going to call Nick Saban. $100 million contract. Come do it. Now, what are the odds he'd take it? Probably 1 in a zillion. But I'm going to start there. If you're talking about wanting the best, you start there. Now, then you go back to the Cignettes and different people. I'll tell you a guy I like. You're going to laugh at me. A guy that I would look at if I'm getting down to the Kirk Cignettes. Clark Lee is a hell of a football coach.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Nashville guy, NBA guy.
Doesn't matter, man. Everybody's for hire. Everybody's got a price.
What we're going to be looking into is if he goes out in Belmead and starts getting those Vanderbilt people, there's about 35 or 40 people they go to, the same people. Chris Lee says it all the time, who's on our show, Southeastern 16, VandyRivals.com. They start getting those people interested, watch out. Look, we got to wrap it up. I've got to head.
I hear you. But let me just say, hey, Vince and Ken, you're going to get hired tomorrow. Who do you want to work for, Florida or Vanderbilt?
That's right.
Yeah, it's easy. I hear you.
Yep.
Y'all, I mean, great panel discussion, man. I got to tell you, Vince Ferrara, the sports animal in Knoxville, Ken Capps, Football Writers Association of America, Buddy Martin, the patriarch of college football in Florida, GatorBaitMedia.com. Can't get any better than this. To say we're blessed is an understatement, but I've got to get on the road and head to Athens, Alabama, and Huntsville for some meetings today. But I got to tell you, one of the best discussions we've had in a while. Ken, tag out, Buddy, and Vince, everybody tag out. But let me just say this. Support our sponsors at Sidelines.live. We got the best executive producer on the planet, Brendan Martin. Find excuses to win. We're so blessed as a country and as a people. Find excuses to win. Go out, find ways to help other people. And all of our guests, y'all, we want to promote your brands because you make this show possible. And thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, Rob.
All right.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, yeah, you bet, man. And Vince, how do they follow you on your show?
Yeah, at Vince Sports, VINC Sports on all the socials, and then 991thesportsanimal.com for all the podcasts. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. And Ken?
At the WFAA and FWAA, sorry. And my Twitter is at Texas Six-Man Ken. And, we're going to have that discussion about the six-man game I went to last Friday. It was so much fun in Willie Nelson's hometown where he played football.
Abbott, Texas.
That's right.
Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Tell your friends and family about it. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Got a great show in store. Have a great day, everyone.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.